what are sort of one or two levers that you think people can kind of pull to get the best bang for their buck?
Yeah, I think if we're making this relevant to current trends in countries like ours, then and by reference to current evidence for cardiovascular disease, then I actually think that probably the lowest hanging fruit that's available for people to pick is a dramatic increase in their dietary fiber intake. Ironically, given everything we've talked about is dietary fat. But the lowest hanging fruit, based on current averages of 11 to 14 grams of fiber a day, I think the biggest bang for your buck, so to speak, the greatest magnitude of effect and the lowest hanging fruit would be to get that up to 35, and for someone eating 11 to 14 grams of fiber a day, that's not going to be something that is, it's going to take some conscious effort. And food sources in particular, obviously, are going to have to become a focus. Secondarily, though, it comes back to dietary fat, and people will argue, okay, look, 13% in the UK, 11, 12% in Australia, 12, 13% in America. Like, what's the magnitude of benefit to getting down to 8%? And it's like, there's a couple of things there. It's not just the absolute reduction in saturated fat, it's the replacement. And so were that to be replaced with a combination of poly and monounsaturated fats from plant and potentially marine, if it's within an individual's kind of current ethical framework for eating, then that's also a change that would, based on what we know, be expected to make a meaningful difference and a beneficial difference. And if those two, the dietary fiber and the fat modification, so that you've got saturated fat in a range of what we might say a Mediterranean or traditional Japanese range of, say, 7-8%, and the majority of fat, irrespective of someone's total fat intake, is then made up with plant-derived monounsaturated fats and polyunsaturated fats from a mix of marine and plant sources, then I think between those two simple changes, I say simple when I mean in the context of someone who's able to make those changes and has some nutritional awareness, and the food-based interventions that can facilitate that, are things like, replacing, looking out for, whole grain versions like oats. And again, they have particular properties with their fiber that is benefit for cholesterol levels, beans, legumes, oils like olive oil or rapeseed oil. Do you call it rapeseed oil in Australia, or do you call it canola oil?
Canola.
I don't know.
Yeah,
okay.
Canola.
Those kind of oils for dressings and cookings and, replacing, say, butter with a polyunsaturated spread. They're all easy things to do. Nuts as a kind of snack. And interestingly, one of the relationships between nuts and cardiovascular disease may actually be nothing to do, not nothing, but may more be to do with their phytosterol content than their kind of saturated or their fatty acid composition. And thinking about food source as well. I mean, if someone's consuming 10% of their diet, 11% of their diet from saturated fat, but they're predominantly consuming foods like yogurt or cheese, would I be worried about them getting that down to 7? No, probably not. No. So food source matters. But they're the simplest, broadest recommendations: is get fiber up and get unsaturated fat up and replace that. So in both scenarios, to get fiber up, you're replacing refined with whole grain and other kind of fibrous food sources like legumes. And then to get unsaturated fat up, you're replacing that with saturated fat.